Good evening and welcome back to Red Wave USA. My name is Ross Raatz. Welcome to the 12th episode of Red Wave USA. I'm so excited to bring you guys another episode of this. I'm excited to be here and talk about the topics that we have today. Kind of a shorter episode, more of a lighter episode, you could say. It is Friday and I didn't want to stick a 50-minute video on you guys. So we're going with a little bit of a shorter kind of route today. So hopefully you will enjoy that. Some of the topics we're going to be speaking on today. Nancy Pelosi announcing she's not going to run for re-election in the midterms. Thank God. Finally, Pelosi will be done as she is making her way out. We're going to talk about some of the drawbacks that may happen for that. Obviously, California is a very blue state, so that seat will likely be blue again. So we're going to talk about some of the negatives that may bring. Next, we're also going to talk about a little bit about the federal government and the shutdown. Just a quick few updates, nothing major. And we're also going to talk a little bit more of a difficult topic for us Republicans, right? We're going to talk about the elections that happened this past Tuesday and a little bit about the kind of repercussions of certain people that got elected, right? We're going to talk about the reasoning behind, the shortcomings that Republicans had in these elections and why the numbers looked the way they did. So anyways, thank you again for joining us in the 12th episode of Red Wave USA. Very excited to keep this going. Thank you again. November 7th, 2025, we get to come and bring some news to you regarding Nancy Pelosi. She's all done. She is calling it quits, and it's probably about time. And you could say that about multiple people in Congress right now, even on the right. I would say Mitch McConnell has kind of passed his date as well. We've seen him fall a few times. It's not funny. Sorry. But we've seen him actually fall a few times in Congress, so I think it would be time for him to kind of give up his tenure as well. But Nancy Pelosi is calling it quits after 20-some years in Congress. Should we talk about term limits? Anyways, but Nancy Pelosi is all done, and some of the repercussions that I wanted to talk about this and what it'll bring. This whole movement that the Democrats are on right now is this progressive kind of socialist movement that seems to be the far left's agenda right now, is trying once again socialism. Obviously, if you dig back in the history books, we've all seen how socialism works. Eventually, if the first stage of socialism does actually implement and work, it then turns into communism. So, and we won't really dive into that. I already dove into socialism and described it all in very thorough detail last episode. But anyways, my kind of fear, or I guess projection, is that this seat is going to be filled by another Zohan Mamdami, right? I think another progressive is going to step up and take that seat. Then we're going to see an infiltration of these progressive, whatever they call themselves, progressive socialists or whatever, but it's just Democrats pushing socialism with their, professional mask on, but that's all it is in a sense. And obviously it's not going to work out, and we know that for a fact. But I just want to touch a little bit about this whole Pelosi thing, and this is a big thing for Democrats. Obviously, they're going to look at it as, Nancy Pelosi did so much work for the Democratic Party, this and that, yada, 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 right? But they are keying in on this seat because they forced Nancy Pelosi to push this new kind of far left agenda. Nancy Pelosi was an old style Democrat, right? And when you have this new wave, right, this almost regime change in the Democratic Party that's pushing this progressive socialism, or just progressiveness in a sense, this far left ideologies, they were pushing this on Nancy Pelosi as, as kind of like a leadership role she kind of held in the Democratic Party. She had a very big voice among the Democrats, and they were kind of pushing this socialist, democratic, far left agenda on Pelosi. And I think they are actually very happy that she'll be leaving so they can put another progressive far lefter in there, right? And I know Pelosi was a very far left congresswoman, but anyways, that's besides the fact. But this does open up a key seat in San Francisco, and we're going to see how this plays out. If it plays out anything like New York and Mamdami, it's going to be trouble. But anyways, we're going to move right through. Like I said, we're going to kind of clip through this episode. I wanted to make a shorter one. I know the longer videos can kind of drag on and be tough to watch. And also, it is Friday. I don't know if I said this at the beginning of the episode, but happy Friday. We made it through another week. Another week of a government shutdown. We're going to move into that a little bit. We're on day 37, and there was actually another vote today. We were on vote number 15. And if you want to take a guess on how that played out, another vote has been blocked by Democrats. And Chuck Schumer actually came out after the vote and said, I'm going to compromise with you, Republicans. I'm going to come to the table and compromise with you. And here's my compromise. Why don't you just pass both of our issues? Why don't you pass the funding bill and our issue? Again, no negotiation whatsoever. It's simply just pass our subsidies once again. There's no negotiation like they said. And again, but this is the Democratic way. This is how they do things. They're going to dress up their ideology or what they're trying to push in a different way as to essentially trick people. But obviously we see right through it, you know. Anyways, I didn't want to stay, you know, too focused on the government shutdown. If anything, I kind of look at Trump to come into action a little bit. You know, he's been pushing this, what he calls the nuclear option. And this nuclear option is getting rid of the filibuster. And getting rid of this filibuster would make it so we wouldn't have to get to 60 votes. Obviously, that's what we're struggling with right now, is getting to the 60 vote mark. We have 55 to 45. 55 or 53, I think, is the Republican majority right now. And we have 2 Democrats that have stepped on. So we're sitting at 55. John Fetterman, the Democratic senator out of Pennsylvania, actually came out and said this is embarrassing. This is an embarrassing political rhetoric that we're pushing. It's an embarrassing thing for the Democrats, and no one really seems to notice that. I'll actually throw his statement up on our video, and that's exactly what these other Democrats need to see. This is embarrassing for them, you know. But anyways, we'll move past the whole government shutdown thing. Last little statement on it. I think Trump really needs to put more pressure than he's doing right now. You know, obviously, like I said, he's pushing to end the filibuster and get it so that we would win on majority. We would win with our 55 votes. But again, that's a touchy subject that could come back to bite us. The Democrats could just do the exact same thing when they have majority. Anyways, I just think Trump needs to really come out, maybe a big statement to the American people, more or less addressing the nation, you know, really putting pressure on the Democrats. And this is put into everybody's living room in America, you know, watching this, and really put pressure on the Democrats in this situation, because that's what we need. This is now the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, and it's ridiculous. But the Democrats are going to have this one on their resume. They're going to have to sit with this. And I know every single liberal disagrees, and they think that this is all on the Republicans, but that's what they're led to believe through their news that they watch, their far left CNN or The View or whatever. I don't know. I say that because all my comments, you know, usually on TikTok, are simply all that it's Republicans and you guys are causing people to go without SNAP benefits and all this, and this is your problem. And it's not. The Democrats are holding this up. I don't know how many times I have to say it and bring it back to you, but this is where we stand. It's the Democrats, and you're not going to change my mind on that. You know, anyways, we're going to move past the government shutdown. I'm extremely sick of talking about it, but updates come out every day, so I need to update you guys, and we can talk a little bit about those updates. So we're going to talk about last Tuesday's elections, right? And most notably, the New York mayoral election. That was the biggest one. Zohan Mamdami, right? That he was the biggest guy all over the news. A mayor race was getting more attention than governor races. That's what was really crazy. And you know why that was getting more attention? This mayor race was getting more attention because Zohan Mamdami was an open socialist. He was open about bringing socialism into the United States, and that's always dangerous. But apparently this is where we fall, or this is where we are at, is that Democrats need to figure out again why socialism doesn't work. And we're going to see that, New York is going to fail. We're already seeing people flee New York. It's a disaster. And most notably, I'm going to see if I can find the video and put it into our video, but it's, Zohan Mamdami ran on this. The government is going to help you. We're going to make everything more affordable. We're going to have free transit, as in buses. We're going to freeze the rent. We're going to have, and this is the scary one, we're going to have government regulated grocery stores. Step one of socialism. But we're going to have all this free stuff, and we're going to make America affordable again, right? And then literally the exact next day, he comes out with his winning ad, or his winning political ad, or acceptance ad, whatever you want to call it. But he was basically saying, remember how I told you not to donate to my campaign? Well, you can start doing that again, so we can actually do the things we want to do. We can actually implement socialism. We can get an early start before we start heavily taxing Americans, right? And it's just ridiculous, but I thought that was so funny. I'm going to see if I can get that clip in there. But he's a disaster. This whole Zohan Mamdami is a disaster. And honestly, I'm okay. Let it play out. I'm fine with this. I really am. Obviously, we knew that we didn't have a chance. Republicans didn't have a chance in New York. It's one of the biggest blue cities in America. But I'm fine letting nature run its course on this one. Democrats are going to find out once again that their democratic socialist route is a failing one, a non-winning one. And it's good that it's happening now. It was the first election since 2024. It's going to happen early, and they're going to find out within a year that it doesn't work, and socialism never has. And the last little tidbit on this whole Zohan election I want to bring up is actually a statistic. They did a polling of sorts after the election to voters to see who came out to the polls and actually voted, right? And what they looked at was, how long have you lived in the city of New York and who you voted for? And the most telling thing is that people that have lived in New York for less than 5 years voted for Mamdami. 83% of them, actually. It made up a majority of the vote, So obviously these people they haven't seen it yet. They haven't seen a socialist city yet. So they'll find out. I'm not worried about it. As I said, we'll let nature run its course. Another thing I want to touch on is how this whole Mamdami thing has really ran through the left and how it's really influenced the left. It has really, and do not take this the wrong way, I say this as a cause and effect kind of thing. Mamdami has brought this up. He brought up the whole ideals that was kind of sneaky in his campaign, that he's going to embrace diversity, which is fine. What actually came out is that he was going to be forcing taxes on white neighborhoods, higher taxes, and that was his whole kind of a part of his campaign. It was flying low under the radar. But this has pushed into a whole kind of idea. A lot of these democratic socialists that actually voted for Mamdami are saying that white people don't have any culture. American white people do not have a culture or any culture to them. Let me just set the record straight on this one. White culture is America, and I know that sounds cliche. White culture is 1776. White culture is the U.S. Constitution, the Constitutional Convention. White culture is the Declaration of Independence, the founding fathers, the foundation of this country. You know, red, white, and blue runs through us. You know, we're patriots. We care deeply about America. And you know what separates us from you, Democrats and Democratic Socialists? What separates us is that we're proud to be Americans. We're proud to be citizens of America. We believe in the American dream. I know it's kind of far-fetched right now with the economy, still dealing with Biden's inflation, but we believe in that American dream. Everyone wants to achieve, at least everyone I know, conservative most likely, wants to have that nuclear family, wants to have the white picket fence in the lawn. That's still achievable. But that's our culture. That's white culture. And that's never faded, and it won't fade. That's still what we strive to achieve in our culture. So saying we don't have culture is a very big misrepresentation of who we are. And I know they say that to more or less oppress us in a sense, but that seems to be the trend. And don't take my words out of context here. I know you might take this, I'm gonna get it. I've been called it on TikTok before, but oh, he's a racist, he doesn't like diversity, all this, he supports ICE, whatever. No, I'm all for diversity. I really am. But don't let that backfire. Don't use that as a means to oppress whites now. Don't try and drive out white culture. We can all coexist together. You know, America was built partially on immigration, and that's fine. But don't use that as a means to push out a certain culture. That's not what America is for. That's not what we stand on. Again, white culture is America. White culture is 1776, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. May I go on? But this is what we have to do now, apparently, as white people. We have to kind of defend our culture, in a sense. I don't see why that should ever be a problem to be white. I don't, but apparently that's the trend right now. But anyways, besides that, we'll move away from the whole Mamdami thing. There was other elections there, and one I wanted to talk about was the Attorney General election, right? The Attorney General election in Virginia, most notably. And I don't know if you guys remember this story, but there was a story that came out about Jay Jones, who actually won the Attorney General position in Virginia. But this Jay Jones that won this election on Tuesday is the same Jay Jones that had text messages leaked that said he wanted to kill his opponent. And it doesn't stop there. Not only did he want to kill his opponent, he expressed in these text messages, he wanted to kill his opponent's family, his opponent's wife, his opponent's children, just for being conservative and pushing these conservative values. But with conservative values, the Democrats think that that's, if you support, conservative values, that's racist, and you're a fascist, and threats to America. They push all of it. And that's what pushes this kind of ideals. That's what pushes their thinking. So the same Jay Jones who had these text messages leaked wins Attorney General? Who would ever vote for that, even as a Democrat? Are you not embarrassed to vote for that? Are you not embarrassed to vote for a guy who openly advertised, I guess not advertised, but openly called for the killing of his Republican opponent? Openly calling for the killing of the opponent of his wife and children? And you're proud to go to the polls and vote for that? That's disgusting. And I don't know how you could ever really live with yourself coming back from those polls and realizing that you voted for that. In a sense, you're okay with this political violence and that rhetoric. You're fine with that. But again, that's the Democratic Party for you. That's the new Democratic Party, I should say. That's this whole new far left progressiveness that they're pushing. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And California, Prop 50 passed, where they're going to marginalize the districting. They're going to redistrict the whole state of California, which I don't really understand the effects of that because it's already super blue, but they're going to make it even harder to get a Republican seat in California by redrawing the lines. And it is what it is. This far left progressiveness is really going to come to a crashing point. I can't tell you when, but it's gonna. And I hope it happens before 2028. Most likely it will. Because again, socialism doesn't last that long. And radical ideologies eventually burn themselves out. And again, my whole kind of main point to wrap all of this democratic socialism up, to kind of put a cap on it, in a sense, is like I said, Democrats, they'll just need a reminder that this style of governing doesn't work, never has. But obviously that's not very apparent, and they just need a reminder every now and then. So this Zohan Mamdami is their reminder, and it will be. You know, what happens when you tax the crap out of the rich, or tax the crap out of, you know, wealthy, well-off people in the state or in the city? What do you think happens? People flee. These big corporations will pull out of New York. These independently wealthy people will leave New York, making the economy struggle. And then who do you think is left with the burden of these high taxes? I mean, if all the rich and the 1% leave the city, who's left dealing with that? And I'll tell you exactly who it is. It's the middle class. That's why socialism doesn't work. Because now you're going to tax the crap out of the middle class who doesn't have the means to support that, to support everybody as a whole, support these federally regulated grocery stores. And now you're left with a struggling economy. So like I said, let nature run its course. It'll burn itself out eventually. But anyways, that's about all we have for today. I don't really have, you know, kind of a feel-good story for today. I couldn't really find anything worthy of putting at the end of our beautiful episode. So I just want to say conservatives continue to stay proud to be conservatives. I know it's tough times right now, but we will get through it. Remember, we have the executive. We have majority in Congress. So that's, I guess, a positive that we can look forward to. When the government opens, when the Democrats decide to stop playing hardball, that is. But anyways, continue to hold your conservative ideals. That's something that is very crucial. We can't back down in this fight, especially now when the Democrats are leaning as far left as possible, leaning into socialism and communism. Continue to hold those conservative ideals that you have, and don't be afraid to have those conservative ideals. Just like this, I'm openly saying I'm a conservative, right? I'm openly talking about politics. That's something that I get a lot of hate for, you know, in whatever comment section it is, YouTube or whatever. Continue to keep your conservative ideals. I can't stress it enough. I really can't. But I also want to say thank you for supporting Red Wave USA. It means the world to me. Again, we are, November 7th? We're a month into this, realistically, and we're already getting views. We got a small subscriber count, and that is totally fine, but we're growing, and that's the most important part. So I want to thank everyone, especially my friends and family. I know they really support this, and thank you for watching this. And so I just want to say thank you again. I can't really say it enough. I know I say it a lot, but anyways, have a great weekend. Happy Friday. Have a great night, and continue to hold your conservative ideals strong. My name is Ross Raatz with Red Wave USA. Thank you for tuning in.